Throughout American history, many enslaved Africans found refuge within Native American communities, blending their African heritage with Native traditions to form unique identities. These Native Black American tribes played crucial roles in resisting colonization, fighting for their freedom, and shaping the cultural landscape of the nation. Yet, their stories have often been silenced and overlooked in mainstream history. The historical context that led to the formation of Black Native American tribes is complex. It's a tapestry woven with pain, resilience, survival, and strength. For centuries, African slaves were forcibly brought to the Americas, but many escaped slavery and found refuge among Native American tribes. Some fled from plantations, while others were brought into native nations as enslaved individuals by European settlers. Over time, these individuals became integral members of the tribes they joined, blending African and indigenous cultures, traditions, and values. Many intermarried, shared knowledge, and fought alongside their new tribal families, forming new communities where Black and Native identities were deeply intertwined. In the southeastern United States, for instance, the Seminole tribe became a haven for many enslaved Africans. The Seminoles not only welcomed these individuals, but also integrated them into their society as free people. This cultural fusion created a distinct community that resisted colonial forces during the Seminole Wars, becoming a powerful symbol of resilience and unity. These alliances were critical in pushing back against colonial encroachment and exemplify a history of shared oppression and resistance. However, the legacies of Black Native Americans have been systematically obscured. Efforts to erase their contributions have been carried out through policies of assimilation, forced relocation, and exclusion. In the post-Civil War era, tribes such as the Cherokee, Choctaw, and Creek struggled to retain their sovereignty, often disenfranchising or excluding the descendants of enslaved Black people who had fought alongside them. This erasure has persisted into modern times, with many descendants still fighting for recognition and equal rights within the nations they helped build. The history of Native Black American tribes is a testament to the resilience and unity of those who resisted colonization and fought for freedom. By uncovering and honoring these stories, we recognize the deep interconnection between African and Native American cultures and the enduring legacy of their shared struggles and triumphs. The Cherokee freedmen, descendants of enslaved Black people within the Cherokee Nation, have long fought for recognition and inclusion. These legal and social struggles are not merely about historical accuracy, but about justice, ensuring that Black Native Americans are recognized as integral to both Native American and African American histories. Their experiences challenge oversimplified narratives of race, identity, and culture in the United States. Recognizing their stories enriches our understanding of the nation's history, highlighting the deep legacies of resistance, survival, and cultural fusion. The history of Black Native Americans offers an opportunity for healing and justice. Acknowledging these erased histories honors the dignity of their descendants and the ongoing contributions they make to America's cultural and political landscape. By restoring their rightful place in history, we also celebrate their indelible mark on both Native and African American communities. Their struggle for survival and identity is woven into the broader fabric of the nation and deserves recognition. Among the most significant examples of these erased histories are the Black Seminoles. Their story begins in the early 18th century when enslaved Africans escaped southern plantations, seeking sanctuary in the Spanish-controlled territory of Florida. Here, they found refuge and allies in the Seminole tribe, forming a unique and enduring alliance. Over time, these African refugees and Seminole peoples created a blended community, adopting each other's customs, languages, and traditions. This fusion of cultures gave rise to the distinct identity of the Black Seminoles. By the 1800s, the Black Seminoles had become a powerful community, playing a pivotal role in the Seminole Wars as they resisted U.S. forces attempting to force Native tribes from their land. Figures like John Horse, a Black Seminole leader, exemplified their resilience and military skill. Horse, who escaped slavery, led hundreds of Black Seminoles to safety in Mexico when they faced overwhelming odds during the wars. His legacy endures as a testament to their fight for freedom and survival. Despite their crucial role in resisting colonial and U.S. aggression, the contributions of the Black Seminoles have often been overshadowed in mainstream narratives. Their influence in the Seminole Wars and their migration to Mexico and later Oklahoma remain underappreciated chapters in American history. Their story illustrates the intertwined struggles of Native and African Americans against oppression and their shared resilience in the face of systemic erasure. Even after their incorporation into the Seminole Nation in Oklahoma, the fight for recognition continued for the descendants of the Black Seminoles. Their legacy, however, stands as a powerful reminder of the complexity and richness of American history, challenging us to look beyond the dominant narratives to uncover the full truth of the nation's past. Many descendants of the Black Seminoles, once recognized as integral members of the Seminole Nation, later faced marginalization. In the 20th century, they were often excluded from the official tribal roles, despite their profound contributions to the tribe's formation and legacy. This exclusion, which persists in some cases today, reflects the broader erasure of the Black Seminole story. Yet, their history remains a testament to resilience and survival. The Black Seminoles not only fought for freedom, but also worked tirelessly to build a community that celebrated the fusion of African and Native identities. They resisted forced assimilation and the erasure of their culture, preserving their traditions and passing down stories of resistance and endurance. Although much of their legacy has been obscured, historians, descendants, and activists are rediscovering and honoring the contributions of the Black Seminoles. Their rich and complex history offers a vital perspective on the intertwined narratives of African American and Native American struggles for identity, freedom, and justice. The Cherokee freedmen represent another critical chapter in the history of Black Native American communities. Their story begins during the forced relocation of the Cherokee people on the Trail of Tears in the 1830s. Before this, many Black individuals were enslaved by the Cherokee, who, like other southeastern tribes, adopted the institution of slavery. However, the Cherokee played a more significant role in this practice, becoming one of the few Native groups to hold enslaved people of African descent. After the Civil War, the Cherokee were required to make treaties with the U.S. government. One key provision was the incorporation of formerly enslaved Black people, known as the Cherokee freedmen, into the Cherokee Nation. These freedmen and their descendants were promised full citizenship rights within the nation. Initially recognized as part of the Cherokee Nation, their rights were later undermined and stripped away during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Racial prejudice and a desire to preserve a pure Native identity drove these exclusions, severing many freedmen from the tribe despite their deep ties to Cherokee culture and their history of fighting alongside the Cherokee during the Civil War. Over time, this exclusion became institutionalized, leaving the freedmen and their descendants to fight for recognition and reparations for over a century. In the early 21st century, the descendants of the Cherokee freedmen, alongside modern activists, reignited efforts to restore their rights within the Cherokee Nation. These struggles represent a broader battle to ensure that the histories of Black Native Americans are acknowledged, their contributions celebrated, and their rights restored. The ongoing fight of the Cherokee freedmen and the legacy of the Black Seminoles are poignant reminders of the importance of uncovering and preserving these intertwined histories, which have shaped both Native and African American communities. The histories of the Cherokee freedmen and Creek freedmen are profound tales of resilience, struggle, and the fight for justice. In 2007, the Cherokee Nation voted to remove the freedmen from tribal roles, sparking protests and legal battles. Descendants of the freedmen, who are the descendants of enslaved African individuals historically integrated into the Cherokee Nation, have long fought for their rightful place as citizens. Their contributions, erased or minimized in historical narratives, remain a vital part of both African American and Native American histories. Similarly, the Creek freedmen, descendants of Black Creek individuals enslaved by the Creek Nation, faced similar struggles. After the Civil War, the Treaty of 1866 recognized them as full citizens, granting rights to land ownership, voting, and participation in governance. Many Creek freedmen also served valiantly during the Civil War, contributing to the nation's military efforts and post-war recovery. However, in 1979, a decision to restrict Creek citizenship to those with a minimum of 1/4 Creek blood excluded many freedmen descendants, leading to decades of legal disputes and calls for recognition. In 2020, the Creek Nation voted to readmit freedmen descendants as full citizens, though controversy over their status persists. The story of these freedmen highlights broader themes of identity, exclusion, and resilience. Their fight for recognition reflects a continuous struggle against historical erasure and systemic discrimination. Recognizing the legacy of the freedmen is not only essential to the histories of the Cherokee and Creek nations, but also to the broader narrative of America's diverse and complex heritage. Adding to this narrative, the Seminole Negro Indian Scouts stand out as a remarkable group of Black Seminoles who served in the U.S. Army. Descendants of escaped enslaved Africans who integrated into the Seminole tribe, they earned a reputation as highly skilled soldiers during the Indian Wars of the late 19th century. Their service exemplifies the enduring legacy of African and Native American contributions to the nation's history. These interconnected stories remind us of the ongoing importance of justice, recognition, and equality in acknowledging the multifaceted identities that shape American history. Reclaiming and honoring these legacies enriches not only the histories of Native American tribes, but also the broader tapestry of American culture. The Seminole Negro Indian Scouts were a remarkable group of soldiers in the late 19th century U.S. Army, primarily composed of Black Seminoles, descendants of enslaved Africans who had escaped and integrated into the Seminole tribe. During the Indian Wars, particularly the Apache Wars, these scouts were instrumental in aiding the U.S. Army's campaigns to suppress Native American resistance in the West. Their unmatched skills in tracking, their deep knowledge of the land, and their tactical expertise made them invaluable to military operations. The scouts were tasked with reconnaissance missions, locating enemy camps, and providing critical intelligence. Their role extended to direct combat, where their bravery and strategic acumen were widely respected. Notably, they played a pivotal part in the capture of Geronimo in 1886, marking one of the final victories in the U.S. Army's efforts against the Apache. Beyond this, they participated in numerous other key military actions that cemented U.S. control over the Southwest. For many scouts, joining the U.S. Army was not just a military endeavor, but also a means of securing their rights as free men and protecting the freedoms they had fought to achieve. Their service symbolized a unique intersection of African American and Native American histories, highlighting their dual struggle for justice and recognition. By defending both their tribal and individual freedoms, they ensured their descendants could live free from oppression. Despite their significant contributions to U.S. military history and the defense of their communities, the Seminole Negro Indian Scouts have largely been overlooked. Their legacy represents a crucial chapter in the intertwined histories of African Americans and Native Americans, underscoring the resilience and sacrifices of these often marginalized groups. Their story is a testament to the enduring fight for freedom, equality, and recognition. Unlike other renowned military units, such as the Buffalo Soldiers or Rough Riders, the Seminole Negro Indian Scouts have not received the recognition they deserve for their remarkable service. Their bravery and sacrifices during the Indian Wars, particularly their pivotal role in the Apache Wars and the capture of Geronimo in 1886, were vital to the success of U.S. military campaigns. However, their contributions have been overshadowed by larger narratives of these conflicts, often relegated to the margins of history. The erasure of their legacy extends beyond military history and into Native American history as well. The significant role of Black Seminoles in defending the freedoms of the Seminole Nation and their integration into its community have often been downplayed or ignored. For much of the 20th century, the contributions of the Seminole Negro Indian Scouts were overlooked not only by mainstream historians, but also within the Seminole Nation itself. where their black heritage was sometimes dismissed. In recent years, descendants, historians, and activists have worked to reclaim and honor their legacy, pushing for their rightful place in American history. Efforts to commemorate their service, including greater recognition in historical accounts and war memorials, have gained momentum. Yet, their contributions remain underappreciated in the broader historical narrative. The Seminole Negro Indian Scouts represent a vital yet forgotten chapter of both military and Native American history. These men, a unique blend of African and Native American heritage, were not only skilled soldiers but also defenders of freedom for themselves and their people. Their sacrifices and courage deserve acknowledgement as an integral part of American history. The broader pattern of erasing the contributions of Black Native Americans highlights the need to amplify these stories. By bringing the history of the Seminole Negro Indian Scouts and other Black Native American communities to light, we can better appreciate the depth of their contributions and ensure that future generations understand their importance. These stories, long silenced, are essential to understanding the rich and complex fabric of our shared history. The histories of African Americans and their connection to the indigenous peoples of the Americas challenge long-held assumptions about identity and ancestry. For much of modern history, the narrative surrounding African Americans has centered on the transatlantic slave trade, portraying their ancestors as exclusively descended from enslaved Africans. However, emerging evidence suggests a more complex history, revealing that many African Americans may have ancestral ties to the indigenous peoples of the Americas. Before European colonization, numerous dark-skinned indigenous tribes thrived across the Americas, exhibiting a diverse range of physical traits, languages, and cultural customs. Tribes such as the Yamasee and others in the Caribbean and South America were native to the land, yet their appearance led European colonists to mistakenly classify them as of African origin. This misclassification contributed to their erasure as distinct indigenous groups, blending their identities with those of African. Slaves and historical records. European explorers and settlers documented the existence of these tribes, though their observations were often clouded by racial bias and an obsession with categorization. For instance, James Adair, in his 1775 work The History of the American Indians, noted the darker skin tones of some tribes, comparing them to the Moors of Africa. Despite these accounts, colonial authorities sought to maintain a rigid racial hierarchy, which necessitated erasing the indigenous identity of dark-skinned tribes. By labeling them as African, colonizers justified the enslavement and marginalization of these populations, stripping them of their heritage and autonomy. This erasure was strategic. Recognizing these dark-skinned individuals as Native Americans would have challenged the racial order that placed Europeans at the top and justified the displacement and subjugation of indigenous peoples. By conflating these tribes with African slaves, colonizers reinforced the systems of slavery and land dispossession, furthering their economic and political goals. Today, the legacy of these indigenous tribes remains hidden in plain sight, woven into the identities of many African Americans. The argument that a significant portion of the modern Black population in America has Aboriginal ancestry calls into question the simplified racial divisions imposed by colonial powers. Rediscovering and honoring this history is crucial to understanding the full spectrum of African American and Native American heritage. The stories of these dark-skinned tribes and their erasure highlight the complexities of identity, race, and power in the Americas. By acknowledging and preserving their histories, we can better appreciate the rich and diverse roots of modern American society and work toward a more inclusive understanding of the past. Between 1492 and 1880, an estimated 5.5 million Native Americans were enslaved in the Americas, a fact often overshadowed by the transatlantic slave trade that brought 12.5 million Africans to the continent. These two systems of enslavement were deeply intertwined. Native Americans with darker skin were particularly vulnerable to slavery due to their physical resemblance to Africans. European settlers frequently failed to distinguish between the two groups, leading to Native Americans being enslaved and sold alongside Africans. This misclassification had devastating consequences for Native Americans, stripping them not only of their freedom, but also of their cultural identities, languages, and histories. The practice of enslaving Native Americans was widespread, occurring not only in the English colonies, but also under Spanish colonial rule, especially in the Caribbean and South America. Historian Andrés Resendez, in his book The Other Slavery, the uncovered story of Indian enslavement in America, highlights how this exploitation was foundational to the growth of the colonial economy. Over time, the shared experience of enslavement fostered intermarriage between African slaves and Native Americans, blending the two communities in complex ways. While some African Americans today have mixed ancestry, others may descend solely from dark-skinned Native American tribes, whose identities were erased through systemic reclassification. The U.S. government's policies, such as the Dawes Act of 1887, furthered this erasure. The act aimed to assimilate Native Americans into European American society by dividing communal tribal lands into individual allotments. However, individuals of mixed African and Native American descent were often deliberately excluded from tribal roles. By classifying them as African Americans rather than Native Americans, the government denied them land rights, reducing the number of people eligible for allotments and increasing the land available for European settlers. This reclassification effectively erased their indigenous identity and facilitated the expropriation of Native American territories. The cultural impact of this erasure was profound. Over generations, many African Americans with Native American ancestry lost touch with their indigenous heritage. The U.S. government's policies encouraged the population to identify solely with their African roots, leading to a widespread misconception that African Americans are exclusively descendants of African slaves. Yet the physical characteristics, cultural practices, and family histories of many African Americans today reflect a dual heritage, with influences from both African and Native American ancestors. Efforts to rediscover and reclaim this lost history are growing. African Americans are increasingly exploring their ancestry and recognizing their connections to indigenous tribes. This process is not only about personal identity, but also about correcting the historical narrative that has long ignored or dismissed the contributions of Native Americans and their intertwined histories with African Americans. By acknowledging this complex heritage, we can better understand the rich and diverse history of America, ensuring that the legacies of these communities are remembered and honored. The history of African Americans and their Native American ancestry challenges simplified narratives, offering a deeper perspective on the interconnectedness of cultural identities in the Americas.